Good morning. This is Debra Wilson. It's Sunday. It's the 17th of June, 2018. It's the time is 900 hours and 36 minutes. That's GMT minus 6, and I am in Canada. I'm in Winnipeg. Like many people, I'm following the Tommy Robinson situation. The perspective that I'm following it from is around my research, which is to repeat it and to reiterate the work I'm doing, is understanding how civil society engages and looks at national security modeling and the way in which civil society responds to national security modeling, and what that does collectively for all of us in terms of our national security. I have said repeatedly that I have a 25-year activism career in the United Kingdom. In 2010, I am going to highly edit and sanitize it. In 2010, I left the U.S. for the U.K., and I ended up living in Birmingham for a few months, Birmingham, England, in the West Midlands. It was a very stressful situation for me, and again, highly editing, sanitizing. In any case, I ended up talking to and being approached by numerous white working class people who initially I was approached by white working class people, numerous, and they would be on all parts. They ran the gamut on the political spectrum. These were all private citizens. Some were apolitical, some were left of center, and some were right of center, and some were so right of center that they were possibly engaging in unlawful and definitely unethical activism. But what I repeatedly heard from initially, again, and in most cases these were people approaching me and were being sent to me because I had hoped to go to school in the West Midlands. So with the same type of, it was a little bit, the nuance was a little different, but it was again looking at how civil society experiences national security modeling. So people started sending people to me to talk to me and to tell me their stories and the way they understood national security, and how the state was caring for them, or in most cases people felt not caring for them. And I remember hearing a lot of anger, and it was overwhelming, the anger. And I remember being quite concerned about some of the utterances that I was privy to, and what that meant for marginalized communities in the West Midlands, the Muslim population there. I wondered, in some cases, some of the things people told me. And then I also heard utterances from working class people of color, people of African descent, and South Asians, some Muslims, some not, about national security and how they experienced it and understood it. And one of the things that, listening again and again and again and being almost inundated and having to tell people to stop sending people to me, one of the things that the underlining theme with everyone, most people, there were a few people I ran across, in my opinion, that sound like very much like the old person that I am, the mature person I am at 60, looking for trouble. They were just spoiling for a fight. And so wherever they were, to me, a small minority of people that no matter what the fight was, if they found aggro, they were going there and to exacerbate things. But in most cases, I found people who were in a tremendous amount of pain and fear and felt rejected by the state and uncared for by the state. So equally, I had people talk to me who were Muslims that felt that way, but overwhelmingly, the higher percentage of people that approached me and were sent to me typically were white people, and again, in most cases, everyone was working class. I'm watching this business with Tommy Robinson, and I'm looking at it from an academic perspective, again, in terms of my research, and I'm looking at it from a historical perspective. The people I encountered in Birmingham, the West Midlands, and some of the narratives that I hear now, in 2018, I heard in 2010. And then I am looking at my personal experiences with the state and how I conceptualize national security modeling. This is going to be one of those podcasts, I guess I'll call it a stream of consciousness, right? I think that's the best way to describe this. And some of the people that I'm now following on YouTube, I don't share political ideologies with them. That's to put it mildly, I don't. But in terms of their bewilderment about the understanding the state, I do understand that. Interestingly enough, one of the experiences I do have in common with several right-leaning, and some people would say far-right, in some cases I would say far-right activists, and I would be left, I would be a left-leaning activist, is that I too made my way to Israel. And I'm, over the last few days, particularly around the Tommy Robinson being in prison on a 13-month jail sentence, and watching all of these and listening to these voices, and I've been focusing on the far right, and the number of people who have turned to Israel for an answer, or who've turned to Israel for solace. It's interesting because, again, I don't share political ideologies with these people. I do not. And also, in my case, I am most of the people I'm following online that are right of center, with a few exceptions, are white and male, and not Muslim. I am a black female, a black woman who is Muslim. So that's the other thing I'm looking at now from an academic perspective. What is it about Israel that there are some people that I know in Israel, and I don't agree with them politically. They are nice people, good people. I don't agree with them politically. And I still think to this day, some of those people, how when I was trying to make sense of things 2010 and the UK government, in terms of my own personal safety, in terms of how and who they protect, my perspective being a Muslim woman who I self-define as being very fluid in the way I express my religiosity around Islam, and a feminist, and wondering how the state protects identities like mine, and the whole business of when I decided to go to Israel for a bit in 2017, I remember near and far people literally asking me, "Are you kidding? You're joking, right?" No, I wasn't joking. And when I went to Israel, I remember going through Tel Aviv airport, and for a black woman who's Muslim, right? To say these words, who has also been critical of some of Israel's policies, who is a person who wants to see less guns and more discussions, that this narrative around us and them, I'd like to see that stop. I am dismayed by the continual interference from parties outside of Israel and exacerbating this us and them narrative that's not doing anybody any good. But nevertheless, in 2017, I would be disingenuous if I didn't say that when I landed in Tel Aviv, I exhaled. So, in my own personal journey, and then the bigger question around my research and looking at this Tommy Robinson business and fully being aware that I am completely aware that even in the best case scenarios, and by I say best case scenario, the purest scenario where you have civilians, in this case I'm looking at civil society saying to the state, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't believe you're taking care of me, so I have to take care of myself. And then joining with other people. I'm aware that even in those spaces, troublemakers come in to take advantage of that pain and that strained relationship, in this case between civilians and the state. I'm aware of that. But I'm also aware that at the crux of this can be, which I know the state isn't in the business of doing feelings, but it can be a sense of hurt, a sense of detachment, and it can be civilians deciding to build their own security model, which you don't want. It's better if security is run with a tremendous amount of oversight by the state, under rules and regulations, with trained people. That's the best way. But when that falters, or it is perceived to have faltered, people have an inherent right and need to be safe. And that can work itself out in all manner of ways if we don't feel that's happening. And so, in listening and watching this story with Tommy Robinson unfold, and I'm aware that it's captured a global audience, and that's of interest to me as well. But for the purposes of my research, my scope is Canada, Israel, and the UK. So for the purpose of my scope, I am actually looking at how British people are experiencing Tommy Robinson, and how and why he has taken root the way he has, and all the imagery and hope and fears and desires and have been assigned to him. Some of Tommy Robinson's brand is of his making, and some of Tommy Robinson's brand equally, I think, is projection from British nationals. And the question is, why? And I think part of that I'm continuing to examine is people feeling disconnected from the state security model. And I think part of that is also, it's difficult for many people to say to the state, you've hurt me. Why did you leave me and not protect me? Now, whether that is a correct assessment of the situation, that's how people feel. And then the state, there isn't any state. there's no government. I mean, there is no government on this planet that goes, hey, we're the touchy-feely government. Come on, talk to us about your feelings. So I think that the more emotive and emotional people become, I think the more the state sometimes turns a deaf, doesn't hear it. So for me, I did say this was a stream of consciousness. It's watching this and looking at the way the civil society and trying to identify what's organic and what's not meddling, right? By people who seek to make trouble, that look for crisis and then to whatever their goals are. So I try to identify what's organic to British people and when identifying what's organic, how and why Tommy Robinson resonates with them. And then trying to look at it from a historical perspective and not being able to deny my personal connections to the United Kingdom and my own feelings about some things that have happened to me. And then the constant utterances of Israel around some activists in the United Kingdom, of which I've one that turned to Israel, and what that means, and what that means not only about Israel, you see, but what that means about those of us who were, are a part of Britain, and how we conceptualize the ways in which the state was engaged in a relationship with us, and how we reacted to the ways in which we perceived and understood the state was in relationship with us. Stream of consciousness, I did say. So I'm going to post this podcast and continue to do my research and continue to, as ever, seek to understand how, why, and what it looks like when civil society engages with the national security model, and to look at that relationship between the state, which is the national security model, and civil society activism. That's the relationship, what that looks like, and if something does go amiss, what happens. This is Debra V. Wilson. I am in Winnipeg, and it's in Canada. Again, it's the 17th of June, 2018, Sunday. The time is now 900 hours and 53 minutes, and that's GMT minus 6. And by the way, I always give the date and time. I'm from a business background, business, auditing, accounting, and HR, human resource background. I've done some forensics work, so I'm always dating and timing everything. So that explains that as well. Again, this is Debra V. Wilson. Thank you.